Hello, everybody. Welcome to Everybody Matters, our Family and Friends edition. I'm Jill Catherine, the host of our chat, and we are here this month to have another conversation with you about how you can support your loved one who's struggling with an eating disorder or body dissatisfaction or disordered eating. So we really always do appreciate your willingness to be supportive, to learn and grow about this topic, and to also be willing to open your mind and hearts to what we can do to create an environment for all of us to feel good enough. So, as you know, each month we do these chats and I bring a topic to the conversation. We have a whole catalog of videos done prior. They're titled and there's little bold descriptions of what they're about. So I encourage you to take a look at those videos to see if any of those speak to you for what you might need right here, right now. Today, what I'm going to do is what we've been doing the last few months is giving you some insight into one of the things that we talked about on our weekly chat. So every week we do a video chat for those in recovery that I host. And they're usually pretty further along down in the stage of recovery, where they're not in necessarily critical condition, but in the ability to, their brains are healthy enough through this disease and that they're doing that deeper work and that psychological and that heart emotional work to heal what it is inside of them. And so we chat every week and we have really great, deep, meaningful discussions about what it is to love ourselves, to feel that we're enough, and how to have courage and resiliency and live our life as who we desire to be. So the specifics of our chat today is something that I want to share with you of what we talked about. And I like to do this because we've done a number of instructional videos here that talk about Eating Disorders 101 and very specific ED videos and how that connects, to you and what you can do to support your loved one. And now at this stage of our videos is really about sharing with you sort of the insights into what this healing process looks like and that deeper process. And so what we talked about recently in our weekly chat is about power, is how to feel as if we can get our power back, feel like we have a sense of power, that we're, and not in power different than control. Power is a place of feeling as if we are able to, that we're not victims to conditions, that we can make decisions that feel right for who we are. Not control, very different than control. And it's a really important distinction for those who struggle with this brain disease, because control is initially such a part of that eating disorder, is wanting control. And what we're really wanting control of is to not feel at all. We don't want control to feel. We don't want that. Control is really about is managing what's happening and not having to let anything come in. Power is different. Power is feeling that it's okay to be me, that I can make decisions in my life that feel right for me, that it's not the life of my parent or my loved one, but it's my life. And how is it that I choose to live? So much of the eating disorder, we have lost the sense of power. Our sense of self has become how it is externally. Carolyn Hodges of the Upstate New York Eating Disorder Service, when I present with her, she often goes through broadly the personality of someone who struggles with an eating disorder. And she will often say how they have a real sense of external self, how they present themselves to the world, but not much a sense of an internal self. And they're lost in between there, that there's not really an internal self. It's all about who who that self is to their presenting to the world. And that is something that we talk about on our chats, is about developing that internal sense of self. And that's where we talk about as having, how can we feel powerful within, is connecting with who we are internally. We're not giving it away to this external self anymore, that I have to be a certain way, look a certain way, act a certain way. The question is, who am I? What do I desire to do? What do I desire to be? How do I desire to live my life? And these are questions of self that bring us into a place of a personal sense of power within. And I share this with you all because you are in beautiful positions to be able to support your loved one. And as they are learning to discover what their voice is and who their internal sense of self is, I often say this in my chats to you, is there might be a conflict in who you want them to be and how you want them to be than who they really are. And that can happen. That's not uncommon. And I think that can happen in any parental dynamic, and even friends and relationships and partnerships. That can happen. We sort of have an idea of who we want that person to be, and they might not always end up being that person. And so, the most important thing to know is for them to find their wellness and how to go through the challenges of life and be resilient in obstacles and stresses and fears without going to an unhealthy pattern, is to have a strong sense of self. And that's where their relationship to is bringing their sense of power within. So I want to read something to you quickly, something that we read on our chat about power. And I just want to dissect a few things in there for you, just so you can understand the approach we need to take to shift the way we're relating in ourselves. And I encourage you to find how that can relate to you in the way you support your loved one. It's a passage on power. Life is the most intense contradiction of terms, with all its joy and sorrow, love and fear, freedom and oppression. Yet how you choose to navigate it is up to you. You don't have to be a victim or a martyr to these conditions. You can claim your path and believe in what feels good in your body and true in your heart. You can trust your intuition. You can trust your gut. What you believe will be your experience, so trust in your wisdom, the innate wisdom of your body. You are beneath no one. You are immune to criticism. You are not your fears. Believe in you and give yourself permission to create your own rule book for life. Ask yourself, who made up these rules anyway? Live life on your terms. Create as you go. What are you waiting for? You are meant to live as who you are and who you decide to be moment by moment. You are in charge. Now, I know this might not resonate wonderfully with you if you're a parent and you're dealing with a young person who's struggling and you're like, whoa, hold on, they're not fully in charge yet. I get it, I do. But what this is about is empowering our loved ones to know they must get to a place where they feel like they can be themselves. And whatever stage they are in their life, that they can be that at that stage and keep growing and learning and growing and learning and growing and learning. Because how we get to this point is we don't feel like we can be who we are, and we don't feel like we can feel whatever it is we're feeling. And so that's why we talk about a couple of the things I want to dissect with you is this line that you can claim your path and believe in what feels good in your body and true in your heart. You know, a lot of us have conflict that maybe what feels good in our heart and true to us isn't what my parents think is true for me, isn't what my partner, spouse thinks is true for me. That's a really difficult conflict because our natures, also one of the things Carolyn expresses, is we're pleasers. We want to make people happy in our life. We want them to be happy. We want to keep the peace. But what can we do if we really don't want to be, and we know that's not what we're called to, when someone we love wants us to be that person? That's a horrible conflict with us, and that is a big trigger for the ED. We in the diseased mind of it, we disassociate from our body. We think it's about the body, but it's not. That's just a distraction. It just gets us to a place where we're not feeling. We're not in our body. We're numbing. We're not feeling. I mean, people say, how can you ignore hunger and how can you do these things to your body? It's because you're not in it. You know, you're just disconnected. You're not in it. So you're not feeling. You're not, those feelings that are coming up, you're really just in your head. So there's a disassociation from your body that's happening. And so for the healing and the recovery process, you have to get back in your body. You have to. And once you get back in there, it's messy. There are a lot of feelings and so many uncomfortable feelings. And one of those areas is doing what feels good and true in your heart if that's in conflict with someone you love. So this disease doesn't just affect the person going through it. Growth has to happen for everyone around it. And that growth area is an opportunity for that loved one to be able to express who they really are and what they really do feel called to do, even if it disappoints other people in their lives. That's critical for their healing, for their sense of self, for them to create and give voice to this internal self that was dying inside, literally was dying, and then the body was dying, right? So if we let the internal self live, if you nurture it, give it space to be who it wants to be, even if it doesn't meet all your expectations, if you give it space to live, they'll want to live, right? So for those of us in healing through this, that's how we start to feel a sense of power in ourselves, that we can feel this, and then we can make these decisions. We can be in our bodies. We can manage these stresses. We can deal with not meeting people's expectations is by listening to what is true for us in our hearts. To be able to trust our intuition to know what's really right for who we are. This one line here, give yourself permission, believe in you, and give yourself permission to create your own rule book for life. Ask yourself, who made up all these rules anyway? Again, I know that might be a difficult thing to hear depending on the age of your loved one, but think of this in mind of this external self, that there, our families, our societies, our schools, our social groups, there's all these sort of rules that many people prescribe to. And some of those rules are really limitations, that they limit us from being who we really are. And so when we're stuck in this external self that I have to look a certain way and be a certain way and act a certain way externally. And we realize that, over time, I'm exhausted and depressed and unsatisfied and never feeling good enough and never feeling worthy. I mean, that is a really negative experience to have. And so to get our power back as a person in recovery, we have to ask ourselves, wait, what is this rule anyways? Why? We have to ask the question, why do I have to look a certain way and be a certain way and do a certain way? Who says? Who says? There isn't just one set way to be successful. There isn't one way to be beautiful. There isn't one way to be smart. There isn't just one way to be talented. There's a way for all of us. And that is the type of internal self-nurturing that we need to do to give ourselves permission to be who we are. We have to break the mental paradigm that was set upon us from whoever, whenever. It's not about actually who said it. It's just the fact that we have to break that paradigm. That's how I am supposed to be. That's how I am supposed to live. That's how I am supposed to act. Because there's a disconnect with the internal self then. Because the internal's like, no, but actually I don't think that. But we don't know unless we're in our bodies and we're feeling. And that's what's so important. That's why for your loved one to fall in love with themselves and their body, it's not just about loving the size and looking in the mirror and saying, I love my shape. It's about them loving who they are that is inside their body. Because our bodies, it's teaching them to listen to what they're feeling, what they're being guided to get that sense of power within that you can't bestow. None of us can feel that sense of power through a title or status. All that is conditional because our status could change, our resources could change. And so if our power is all lined up in those, external status symbols, then we lose our sense of power if something's gone. What we're teaching here is how to gain that internal sense of power. That sense of power when someone walks through the room, you're like, whoa, there's something about them, that they just have a sense of confidence. It's coming from that place of their inner self. And that is what is so necessary in this healing process, is to nurture that, is to nurture a place of questioning of what is true, why is it that this has to be like this? And it's not comfortable at all for families to go through this or relationships to go through this. And so as I share this in much that the questioning of the why is less about saying you're wrong, but it's more about what's right for me. Why? What's right for me? Can you allow space for it to be right for me? Without it, it's not about harming you or hurting you or wanting to be against you. It's about, I want to be with what's right for me. And that's the greatest thing I can offer to you through this chat and through your relationship with your loved one is if you can receive it, not as about being a personal against you, but them discovering what's right for them. And if that looks different than maybe what is already in that relationship or environment, that it's that different. It isn't because one's right or wrong or bad or good. It's because we're all different. And how can we create a space and that allows everyone to respect what's right for them? The other thing that I wanted to bring up on this is live life on your own terms, create as you go. What are you waiting for? And this whole thing about create as you go. There's, many of us who've been through this have a lot of anxiety. We're pleasers, right? And we're going back to asking those rule questions. We tend to believe that we have to have it all figured out, that we're on this path and we're supposed to, have it all figured out, and we're very goal-oriented. And yet at the same time, we can become very overwhelmed. We can set very high standards and expectations for ourselves that even if we almost meet them, we'll never see that we got as close as we did. We'll just see the parts that we failed, right? These are part of our wiring. And so this concept around create as you go, that we don't have to know what our life is going to look like for the next 50 years. We don't have to know what our job is going to be for the next 50 years. We can just create as we go. And that's really, really important in a way that you can support your loved one is because this feeling of overwhelm can come up often. And if you can help and say, we just keep it right here, right now. We just sort of figure it out as you go, can take a huge burden off. And it's counterculture. Our culture really wants us to have everything sort of figured out. But if we can just allow ourselves to create as we go, that gives ourselves permission to have this relationship with our internal self, to develop it, to keep learning who we are and growing instead of figuring it out. I always, say the phrase of just choose the next best thing that feels good. Just choose the next best thing. Because I often work with young people who are graduating from college and not quite sure, what they want to do with the rest of their life, and they're just paralyzed, and they're stuck, and they're a deer in headlights, and they don't know what to do. And so we just bring it back down here. It's create it as you go. Choose the next best thing that feels good. And that's really important, helping our loved one manage the anxiety and the overwhelmed and that, high standard they put on themselves. Just create it as you go. Just do what's here right now, what feels right now. And lastly, we finish up with that line of you are in charge. And that's the inner voice that we want all of our loved ones to have, is that they're in charge. We want them to feel a sense of they're in charge of their life, that they can make decisions that are supporting themselves. And to clarify, them being in charge with their life doesn't mean they're against you or against their loved one. It means they have permission to listen to what they need. We want them to feel in charge of taking care of themselves, listening to what they need, listening to situations they're in and feeling like they can take control. And different than a control of not wanting to feel, but control that I can make a choice, that I can choose. But they have to be in their bodies and feeling a sense of they have the power to know that they are in charge. They're in charge of their lives, that they are in charge of, and they have the charge to be who they want to be. So feeling a sense of power inside of themselves is a really critical point to their recovery process. And I appreciate any support you can offer them on that journey. So thank you. We'll see you next month.